Kia ora koutou, everyone. Nō mai haere mai. Welcome to our Northern Regional Council Reputation Review hearings. It's lovely to see you all on screen, and for anyone live streaming, welcome as well. So recognising that this is not our usual format for our hearings, due to COVID-19, we are all remote at the moment. Hopefully next time we will not be so. But yeah, thank you all very much for arranging your technology and to our staff for arranging ours. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you are around the council premises today, obviously fire alarms go off outside into the car park, earthquakes drop, cover and hold. If just any visitors, please make sure you've registered at reception and also use the QR code and have the appropriate COVID masks and other guidelines. I'd like to hand over to Deputy Chair Justin Blakey, Councillor Justin Blakey, to open us with a karakia. Thank you, Justin.
Kia ora Penny. Kei noi tātou. Whakataka te au ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te taonga. Kia mā kina ki ota, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hiaki ana, te atākura, te tio, he hoka, he hauhu. Ti hei mauri o.
Mauri ora.
Kia ora, thank you very much, Justin. So we'll just get a few of the formalities out of the way. Apologies, we have an apology from Councillor Colin Kitchen, unable to be here today. Chris, do I need to move and second that? I do. Moved Marty, seconded Amy. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. We will take conflicts of interest as we go, unless someone would like to declare some one or two at the moment. No. So item 5, we did have 2 late submissions. So we would like I'd like a mover and seconder to approve for those 2 recommendations. Thank you, Jack. Seconded Rick. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Carried. Right, we can move on to the hearings. And we have Liam and Ted. If you have been instructed on how this is going to go today, I'll just quickly run through it though for anyone live streaming that is listening. So submitters have 10 minutes to submit, and they will get an indication at 9 minutes that they have 1 minute to go. Chris will do that for us. Councillors will then have the opportunity to ask any questions of clarifications on what has been submitted on. There won't be any debate or cross-examination. Once all the submissions have been heard, I'll close the meeting and staff will prepare a report including the key things raised in the hearings, and we will have deliberations next Tuesday, which will also be live streamed, aka remote. Okay, so with that, I would like to hand over to you, Liam, to, or is it, I think, Ted that is going to open for you. Take your lead.
Kia ora, Penny. Ai te mea tu tahi e tu tautoko te kai karakia tīmatai tēnei hui huinga, tēnā koe Justin, tēnā koe moto karakia nei. Ai tēnā koutou e te kaunehere o tai tokarau, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. He mea tuarua, tōko ingoa ko Ted Ratana, ko te whānau o Hapakuku, ko Ngāti Wairupi Ngāti Kuri te Hapu, ko te uri o Taunaha te iwi. Nō reira e nā whanaunga a rau rangatirama, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora again, everybody. My name's Ted Ratana. I'm kaumātua for our whānau, or hapakuku. I want to now hand over to my nephew, Liam, who is going to present our submission here today. Kia ora, Liam.
Kia ora.
Ora.
Kia ora, Uncle Ted, and kia ora, Penny, for welcoming us today to speak before the committee. So e mihi ana kia koutou katoa e ngā kaimahi, ngā kai kaunihera, te kaunihera a rohe o te tai tukarau. Kōro whana mea pakauri ngā maunga, ko tinana mamari kora haupo ngā waka, ko here kino te wahapū, ko waikere te oniroa, ko rangi heke me te uhiro ngā awa, ko manukau me rangi kohu ngā marae, ko Ngāti Wairupe, Ngāti Kuri te hapū. Ko Liam Rātana tuku ingoa. Ko te hea mana o te poari o te Rātana Hapakuku Whānau Trust. So kia ora koutou, my name is Liam Rātana. I am the chair of the Rātana Hapakuku Whānau Trust, which represents a group of landowners in Te Tai Tukarau and the subsequent beneficiaries. I'd like to begin by acknowledging all the councillors gathered here today to hear these submissions and taking the time out to listen to my submission this morning. Before we begin the submission, I would like to begin by also acknowledging all of the mihi and sacrifice that has led us to be here today, or to this point. The incredible work carried out by so many people and all the different individuals definitely won't be forgotten. So as descendants of and landowners in Te Tai Tukarau, the way our interests are represented is of the utmost importance to our well-being and that of our future generations. In regards to your initial proposal for how Northlanders are represented on Council 2021 document, we take solace in the fact that this is continuing a region-wide conversation about how Māori interests can be represented in Council. We also wish to note that the Northland Regional Council is actively consulting with and supporting Māori interests through such means as the Māori Advisory Group, mana whakahono arohi agreements, iwi and hapu environmental management plans, relationship agreements, involvement in co-governance arrangements, and more. We also note that all three district councils have also agreed to introduce Māori wards. Despite these and many other positive and promising successes, we still believe that there is a lot of work to be done. There are a number of issues pertaining to the proposal that we would wish to address today, and these are as follows. Firstly, we believe that how Māori in Te Tai Tukarau are represented should be decided by Māori in Te Tai Tukarau. This includes adequate consultation with all local Māori. Secondly, there are governance models that naturally exist within whānau, hapu, and iwi environments within Te Tai Tukarau. Some of these models are tikanga-based and have operated since before the arrival of British common law. Such models of governance and representation are based upon a Māori view of the world, and this is something that we thought extremely important to note. In relation to the proposed size of council and the number and boundaries of general and Māori constituencies, we would like to note that legally each councillor must represent roughly the same number of people, which is also known as the plus or minus 10% rule. Now, the proposed 2 Māori councillors would represent a new regional-wide district called Te Raki Māori, which encompasses all Māori enrolled on the Māori electoral roll and living in the region. Under the proposed model, and according to figures from your organisation and the Electoral Commission, there is around 47,600 Māori in the region who are eligible to vote, with 40,000 of them currently registered on the Māori electoral roll, or under 85% of all those eligible. We also note that Māori make up around 32% of the eligible voting population in Te Tai Tukarau. The proposed model of 2 Māori seats from a total of 9 equals only 22% of all representation on council, which we believe fails to adequately reflect and represent the number of Māori within the voting population. Referring to the data in your proposal on page 9, which contains options for the makeup of council based on the legal formula, Based on that formula, there could be 3 Māori seats and 11 general seats, which increases Māori representation on council to 27%, which is still 5% lower in relation to the population it represents, but 5% better than 22%. This being said, there also appears to be no reason that the model cannot be a combination of 4 Māori seats out of 12 on council, which equates to 33.3% representation, better reflecting the percentage of the population, the councillors will represent. If the model that is currently proposed is adopted, we believe that there is a severe risk of inadequate representation for groups in our society. There are a number of reasons that we believe this, which I will expand on now. Firstly, the current model proposes that both Māori and non-Māori can stand for election in a Māori constituency. This is the first issue that we would like to note. Secondly, there is nothing preventing 2 Māori councillors being elected who both live in the same general constituency. For example, 2 Māori who reside in Whangarei Central area could be elected to fill both of these positions. Therefore, we're expecting a Māori living in Whangarei to represent Māori who live in Te Hiku, and as we're all aware, the needs of these constituents would vary greatly. Under the current proposal, splitting half of the eligible voters from the Te Raki constituency between 2 councillors means that each councillor would represent roughly 23,800 voters in their constituency. This is 5% more than the newly proposed Whangarei Central constituency, but this population is spread out across the entire Northland region. Bearing this in mind, we find it difficult to believe that 1 or 2 councillors could adequately represent such a large community so sparsely populated. We must also consider whether or not people will have reasonable access to their local councillor, whether or not councillors will be able to easily attend meetings and events in their constituency, and whether the representation arrangements facilitate the sharing of an appropriate and ideally equal workload amongst the councillors. Now, having at least 4 Māori councillors representing these constituents would obviously literally half the workload placed on the Māori councillors. And whilst pay may not be as high for each councillor, the work would be a lot easier and there would obviously be more resources available to them. So it's for these reasons, and as a temporary measure towards the improved representation of Māori on the council, that we support the establishment of separate North, East, South and West Māori constituencies in Te Tai Tokerau, with 1 Māori councillor representing each constituency. We'd also like to note or propose that each councillor must identify as Māori. We must explicitly also state that we hope that the council continues to consult with Māori on the issue of representation, and we look forward to seeing more positive changes in the near future. Increased representation on council is just one way that Māori interests can be better represented at a local government level. So in a nutshell, that is our submission. I'd like to thank you all once again for taking the time out to listen to us this morning and allow us to make the submission. And we sincerely hope that at least some of what we've spoken to today is taken on board and given some consideration. Nō reira, tēnā koutou katoa.
Liam, thank you very much for your comprehensive and well-presented submission. And I do thank you for the acknowledgements at the beginning. I'd like to hand over now to Robert to mihi back.
Ka pai. Te hewa mauri ora ki te whaiao, ki te ao marama. Tēnā rawa atu koutou, kia koutou e aku rangatira, kua whakarauika mai nei, e kōrero tia nei e pāna ki ngā kōrero tai pito pito o te kāingani. Nā reira e mihi ana kia kaurua, kia koe matua Ted, kia koe hoki e Liam, nau anō i whakakanohi mai mō tō iwi, rātana hā kuku trust, nā reira anei anō te kaunihira e whakahoki ngā mihi kia kaurua me tō wā I whai wahi mai ki tēnei o ngā kaupapa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, ka huri.
Tēnā koe.
Nā koe.
Kia ora, Robert. Are there any questions of clarification from any of the councillors? And I do apologise, Liam and Ted, that some of the councillors' cameras are off, and for anyone live streaming, that's to do with internet connections. So I should have mentioned that earlier. So any questions from councillors? If you could just put your hand up, either using the... No, there doesn't appear to be any. I just had one quick one, Liam. You said that with more Maori councillors, there'd be more resources available. What resources were you meaning there?
The resources I was referring to there was obviously just the number of councillors itself. So 4 councillors as opposed to 2 would halve the workload placed on the councillors and spread the resource out. Probably may have been more appropriate to use.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Thanks very much for that. So nothing further from councillors? Amy.
Sorry, not a question, but I just really wanted to say thank you and acknowledge the points that you've raised. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Marty?
Yeah, just I wanted to tautoko it as well. Thanks very much for your presentation. It's very helpful. Kia ora.
Thank you. I think we can probably do that without saying it. This is the opportunity for questions for clarification, councillors. Thank you. All right, so that appears to be that. Again, thank you very much for coming on and submitting. We do appreciate the verbal submissions. So kia ora, Liam, kia ora, Ted.
Kia ora, Penny. Kia ora anō koutou.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you.
Chris, do we have Margaret ready for us?
Margaret has not arrived yet, and I'm just in correspondence with Jane Johnston, who is just trying to connect now. We could just give it a minute or do, in fact, she's just connected now.
Great.
Sorry, she had a few technical issues just connecting with us.
Yep. So I will see her on the screen when she connects.
Yes, she's just joined now. Good morning, Jane.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Jane. Kia ora and welcome.
Are you ready for me already?
Yes, we are. Yes, we finished the first one and you're the second one up. So I know that you're well aware. You've got 10 minutes, and I'm not sure that you were on when I mentioned that some councillors have their cameras off, but it's to do with internet connections only. They can hear you fine. Yeah.
That's all right. I was going to just make a few notes for myself because I wasn't expecting to be on until 1:30, but that's all right. I can just wing it because I've done enough prep, I think.
We can
that's fine.
For a few minutes.
You sure we can give you time?
No, it's okay. I've thought about it, and I'll probably be more succinct if I don't write myself lots of notes. So let's go.
All right.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll just acknowledge. Well, no, I won't. Oh, it's all right. I'll just get going. Look, we had a very large public meeting in which representation was discussed. I wrote this as an individual, but I'm the chair and secretary for the Kerikeri Residents and Ratepayers Association and the Paihia and Surrounds or Districts Residents and Ratepayers Association. And we held a combined meeting along with inviting Russell and Opua and Kawakawa people because they're all part of our ward, and we're looking to merge into one big Bay of Islands Whangaroa Residents and Ratepayers Association. Now, we had this massive public meeting because of the thing that prompted it was the rates review that the Far North District Council was holding. So we had a really good turnout. There were probably close to 300 people in the room at Kingston House. And I think Marty, who I was going to acknowledge as our local councillor, did actually attend that meeting, although I'm not sure he can confirm that with you some other time. But in that meeting, we did ask about representation, and it was really clear, almost unanimously within the room, that the constituents want more representation because they want to see diversity. So not just in terms of specific Māori wards, but they want to see more representatives within council to reflect the diversity of our communities. And when we look at what the NRC has proposed, we actually, in order to accommodate the Māori seats, lose a couple from the general wards. It reduces from 9 to 7. And there was a strong feeling that that's the wrong way to go, that in fact we want to see an increase. And so that's why we've opposed your proposal and suggested an alternative. We're really keen, not just because of representation, which would fulfill one of the criteria that you have to consider, which is around the regional community of interest. We consider that the Kaipara, stretching right across from west to east or east to west, has very distinctive and very different communities. Similarly, in the far north, if you're looking at Te Heku all the way down to, near wherever it is, Tihana, or, past Tihana or around Tihana way, there's a massive difference in the geography, the catchments, and the work of the regional council, but also in the communities of interest. So we consider that we need to see that reflected better in representation around the council chambers. We also thought that there's a strong need for effective representation, which doesn't mean partnering up just with government agencies or partnering up with other councils. We want to see our councillors more available to the constituency. And we think that can only be achieved by having less constituents per councillor. In other words, more councillors. So we think that the pitch where you've landed is too many. We'd like to see more councillors and treating their ratepayers and residents as their partners and being able to get out more into the communities that they're serving. And we definitely want to see more of a focus on serving and being a part of and very well connected to the communities of interest. And part of that is because we can see massive changes being proposed and significant adjustment needing to be made across the local government sector. So in order to have effective representation, we think you need to be more accessible, and that will be achieved only by having more of you. And that also speaks to issues of fair representation. I've already mentioned diversity. We have huge retirement settlements. We have massive horticultural industry. We have extensive farming and pastoral and forestry, but we also have a lot of tourism and other, support services that struggle with our dispersed population. We want to see all of that reflected around the council chambers, particularly, and I'm going to highlight this, particularly at this time when we are facing such significant change potentially and work of a regional council. We're looking about not just the local government reforms and the proposals that government's talking about with Three Waters. We don't in fact see that as a Three Waters management. We see that as infrastructure, asset ownership and governance transfer, because it's actually about the pipes. If we want to talk about water, it becomes a regional council function to allocate water. And we can see massive issues coming up around allocation of water. We haven't got good studies on what our water supplies are. We know there are huge issues around the Avocado and Apuri aquifer, for example, but we can say the same issue coming up elsewhere. We've got dam proposals, we've got need for more irrigation, we've got need for better and more secure water supplies to feed into the pipes that government's talking about transferring into other entities. And we see that as a huge issue for the councils. We want to see you able to get on top of that by having more heads around the table, working with their local communities who have intergenerational connections to the land and the water and understand what's been happening and the changes going on. We think it's really important that you therefore get more councillors to be able to connect to those communities. Not just water allocation, we can see increasing hazard need to mitigate and adaptation by hazard management as a council function as part of government's climate change adaptation agenda. We think it's a huge issue for the regional council to get its head around. Energy supply and security in terms of geothermal, but other potential options that we have up here around solar and, you know, wave generation, you know, power generation. So we think that there's massive potential, but a massive workload. Also RMA reforms, the new Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, biosecurity risks in a changing climate, and with, you know, potential looking for more resilience around trade. We can see that having international arrivals in MIQ in Auckland has really stuffed up distribution and supply chain and distribution networks. So we're concerned that, you know, we want to see Northport taking a greater role, and that's something that the regional council should be looking at in terms of the regional transportation network strategy. There's also, I mentioned biosecurity, but also biodiversity and the issues that we've seen in terms of how our people, the constituency, reacted to the Far North District Council trying to just map areas of significant natural or Indigenous habitat. So we consider, from a ratepayer's perspective, that during these significant proposed changes, given our diversity of the region, and it is the second largest region in New Zealand by land area, because of the diversity of the geography, the different types of catchments going both east and west, the fact that we're the northernmost part of New Zealand with a unique climate. We have the barrier of Auckland just below us that really severed us from the rest of the country when it comes to transportation and getting supplies needed up here for our growth areas. We really want to urge, and I think I've probably, you know, rambled at you quite. Hopefully you've got it. Can't impress on you enough how important we think it is that you actually expand the membership. We don't think that the wording of the document is very accurate in talking about being easier to work together as a team. We think that because there is so much change afoot, I didn't mention in the district councils doing their own district plans. So Far North District Council is about to notify, in about November this year, it's intending to notify a new district plan. It's the first time we've had an integrated or comprehensive look at a new district plan for the Far North since the RMA was adopted back in 1991. This is only their second generation plan. That's another significant workload for the regional council to get its head around what's proposed and what the consequences will be, and to be able to work with communities to see if it's actually the right way to be going. So I wanted to highlight that again, because we really want you to stop thinking about yourselves as working as a team around chambers. We want to see debate. There are going to be divisive issues. We need you to interrogate and critically assess all of the problems and issues that are being identified for our region, and work really hard to derive solutions that serve the greatest range of interests. And that doesn't happen by everybody pretending to be a great team. We want to see you doing critical assessment. We want to see you working more closely with your communities of interest and having really robust debates around the council chambers. So given that that's where we're coming from a ratepayer perspective, we're really, we can't impress on you strongly enough how important that is. The other thing I'm just going to highlight in the little while longer that I've got is in the figures. Sorry?
You've got very little time left. You've got about 30 seconds.
Okay, so I'll just mention, looking at the population distribution stuff, I've looked at your figures that you use, and you ended up coming up with quite a different number to what the Local Government Commission has on its site in terms of the number of voters. Local Government Commission has 108,000 voters enrolled on the general roll and 26,000 Māori. You're using a figure of 47,610 Māori. I wanted to highlight that, and 146,000 general. That represents the youthful population that we have in our Māori community. And over the next 6-7 years that we're talking about, that this representation review will cover, a lot more Māori will come into the role, right? So we think it's entirely appropriate to raise the number and have at least 3. We want you to introduce wards for them, so that they're not 3 people from one family who all live in whangarei or whatever. We think that's a really good idea to have Māori wards so that they represent Aotearoa or a particular area, and are more able to work with iwi. And so we suggested 9 general from the general role and 3 from Māori, but it could just as easily be 10 and 3 and be even better representation.
Sorry,
Thank you.
cut you short. Excuse me for interrupting, but you are out of time. But thank you very much for, again, another very comprehensive submission. So we will move to questions of clarifications from councillors. Do I have any? I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay, so thank you once again, Jane, sorry. And we do appreciate you making your time today to submit to us verbally. It is always helpful to have that as well as a written submission. And,
okay. Well, the written submission was a lot briefer, wasn't it? I used your form.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest.
Bye.
You're welcome to stay on and hear the others if you would like to.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind listening to a couple more while I'm here. Thank you.
Do it, Chris. Jane doesn't have to go back in and join live stream.
Stay on the link and listen just as any member of the public can, so that's fine.
Yeah, okay, very good. So do we have Margaret waiting?
Yes, we do have Margaret now. So Margaret, are you ready to prepare the budget submission? Can I carry some papers for you?
I've just given some comments for people.
I can definitely circulate those.
Yeah, well, I did too.
Okay, great. Thank you. Can you have your cards that I need?
Welcome, Margaret.
Because there are people.
I'm just going to take the centre seat.
Where's where I sit?
Take centre stage here. And you can see
do we need to have this on?
Not while you're speaking. No, you can take your mask off.
Thank you. Because I find it absolutely impossible.
Welcome, Margaret. It's lovely to see you, even if it is remote. Thank you very much for making the time to come in today. It's Penny Smart speaking here. So I'm sure you're well aware that there's 10 minutes for your submission. And
yes, I do. I've timed it, don't you worry.
I'm
only
happy.
Part of the proposed voter presentation that I support is the introduction of 2 Maori seats on the Northern Regional Council. Obviously, these candidates should have Maori whakapapa. However, how these candidates should be selected should be a matter for Maori to decide. Nevertheless, as a Pākehā outsider, I would hope that these 2 seats were not solely filled by Ngāpuhi because of this tribe's historical and even recent adverse behaviour. The Masket Wars in particular had a profoundly damaging effect upon other Northland iwi and hapu, and explains why local government representation should not be dominated by Ngāpuhi. As for the rest of the proposed changes to voter representation, I completely reject them. Why? Because we already have a serious problem of poor voter turnout, which I understand was little more than 42%. Nothing in these latest proposals seeks to address this. Quite the contrary. If anything, they are likely to make matters worse, despite the introduction of Maori seats. These so-called representations failed to make any attempt to increase more voters. Proof of this is revealed in the proposed consultation process, which was limited to only those with computer access. What about the rest of the region? Not only do a number of residents not have a computer, some don't even have access to mains electricity. Please tell me, what was the point of organising a Zoom hui when automatically a number of would-be voters can't participate? What is the point of organising market meetings and publishing dates and times on the council's website when, once again, a number of residents are not connected to the internet? Remember, these arrangements were made before there was any kind of a level 4 lockdown. In fact, there was no expectation of coronavirus infections here. It is very difficult not to come to the conclusion that the Northern Regional Council is deliberately limiting voter participation and doesn't want to involve as many people as possible from all walks of life. You know, I was under the impression that for democracy to function, everyone has to participate and moreover has to understand the issues involved. Well, how can this happen when a sizable section of the community is excluded? How can reducing the number of council seats, that's the ones after Mary, improve the situation? Rather, it appears to anticipate a further reduction in voter numbers. After all, Maori have largely failed to participate in the past. I might remind you that at present you are all minority councillors. You don't even represent the majority of your constituents. So what moral right have you to make such decisions? It strikes me that a major shake-up is required of local government if it is to function democratically. Certainly it's not doing this at present and doesn't look to improving matters in the future. Now just look at this present meeting. You haven't even bothered to attend in person, face-to-face with submitters, but are using COVID-19 as an excuse to distance yourselves. As we are at level 10, what was to stop you sitting here 2 meters apart to listen to each submitter and pose your questions where appropriate? After all, isn't it possible to have meetings of up to 100 participants? So why aren't you here? All you're doing is to demonstrate how reluctant you are to engage with constituents, except those that suit you, it seems, which proves how unsuitable you are to be councillors. One fact is obvious. You need to make a far greater effort to involve yourself with the population than at present, and should all forthcoming councillors. In consequence, you not only need to keep the same number of representatives, but also the same constituency boundaries. Moreover, there has to be a change in council's behaviour, in its culture, as to how it interacts with the northern population. For example, there has to be a stop on limiting consultation to that only generated by computer processes. There has to be far more inclusion of the public in council meetings. Indeed, it is up to councillors to see that council staff always respond to correspondence instead of restricting themselves to emails. They should put a stop to staff limiting submissions to resource consent applications. In fact, the Northern Regional Council needs to make, needs to represent all sections of the community, not just those that are computer literate and suits their convenience. Incidentally, I find it very concerning that, considering the importance of the state of the environment and the progress of climate change, there is not one committee devoted to these issues. From my perspective, the changes, irrespective of the inclusion of Maoris, will achieve nothing worthwhile and will, I think, reduce the local government body election to nothing but a farce. I mean, if we're still going to have only 40 or so % of people, you're not actually representing everybody here and what's happening. We need to find ways and means to improve this. And one of the problems is that the actual tenure of the council is only 3 years. And this means you have a short-term view. With climate change and other problems, we need far longer. And I think that's something that needs to start straight away. We need to extend the time from 3 to 4 at the very least. I don't really see there's any need for me to go on any further, but as you've gathered, I'm not at all happy as to how the council is operating at the present. I've tried to make some suggestions as to what needs to be doing, but I'm not a miracle worker. But we simply have to find a way to improve and get more people participating.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Yes, you've been very clear, and we do appreciate, as I said, you coming in. Are there any questions for clarification for Margaret from councillors?
Well, to be honest, I mean, I actually find this setup horrible. I don't care what anybody says. You cannot get the same feeling with people when they're actually face to face. I agree, of course you can use computers, but you shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You shouldn't then decide we're going to not have public meetings with everybody present. We're only going to have this sort of thing by video. My sister is a medical consultant, and she has said she's not here in this country as it happens in the UK, but for example, she says that having to try and speak to her patients on video just isn't the same as actually having them face to face. And I think you're failing in communicating with people. It just isn't the same. Believe me, it really isn't.
Yes, thank you, Margaret. We will certainly take your comments on board. I do believe that unfortunately we're out of time, and we'll have to end it there. So, Chris, we haven't got Federated Farmers, excuse me, waiting yet, have we?
No, they haven't arrived as yet. And just checking, there weren't any questions for Margaret.
No, any questions for Margaret?
Well, I think it would be difficult for them to ask any questions after what I said. But
you've made your...
It's going to make you think.
Just to comment, Margaret, thank you very much for your submission, and you have made yourself perfectly clear, and I think a lot of your concerns deserve answering. Thank you.
As a former teacher, I've always tried to get my students thinking. No, it doesn't matter what I think, it's what they think. And in a way, it doesn't matter what I think here, it's what you think. And how you're going to carry on as councillors. But I honestly think we can't go on as we are. We have got to find different ways of dealing with things.
Thank you, Margaret. So the process from here, as Federated Farmers aren't waiting, we're going to adjourn the meeting, correct, Chris?
Yes, that's correct. I'd suggest we adjourn. I'll stop the live stream and I'll advise when they have arrived, and we can do a second session of live streaming if everyone's happy with that.
Okay, so thank you everyone that was able to join and live stream. We will adjourn.